Well, unfortunately, with every positive, there is a weakness, even for the evidentialists. Although when we get to other methods, weaknesses are going to be interesting. So we're looking forward to that. But here, the weaknesses potentially is that evidential apologetics has been widely criticized from a number of perspectives. And so here's where our authors will consider some of the most common and important criticisms identifying potential weaknesses in or challenges to the evidentialist approach.
Right. So let's kind of dive into this. And again, there are three of these. And so we'll work our way through these. So the first one is that evidentialists in this particular methodology and approach assumes the theistic worldview. They assume the theistic worldview, right? Now, the principal objection, they tell us, to evidentialism from a classical apologetics perspective is that it attempts to make a case for the theistic worldview on the basis of facts. According to both classical apologists and most reformed apologists, which we'll get to next time, this will not work, right? One must first have a world view before one can interpret the facts in the world. So you have to have a view of the world before then you understand how the facts fit with that particular view of the world, right? Norman Geisler, who we looked at when we were looking at classical apologetics, put it this way. He says, facts and evidence have ultimate meaning only within and by virtue of the content and context, rather, of the worldview in which they are conceived, right? So facts have meaning, events have meaning with regard to the contexts with which they are conceived. He adds that meaning is not inherent in historical facts and events. Meaning demands an interpretive context that is distinct from the facts and the evidence, right? So if I see a particular rock, one person might argue, well, that rock is a result of millions and millions of years of, all kinds of geological, operations that happen on that rock. And somebody else might say, no, I think it's just, a few thousand years old, right? And so you have to look at the worldview, the context, in order to interpret the so-called fact that you're looking at. Right. Mm-hmm. And so that's the criticism here. It kind of assumes a theistic worldview.
Right. Which may not always be a negative, but here, within the context of the evidentialists, it is seems to be the negative. And so, when we talk about, even looking at the resurrection, right? So here's the claims by a man who says, I'm the way, the truth, and life. No one can come to the Father except through me. I'm the Christ. I am the Lord of the Sabbath, all these things. And if you put your faith in me, then I will forgive your sins and pay for them. And you will have my righteousness imputed to you fully and completely. And then he dies and rises again. Well, does that necessarily follow that what happened, even though he claimed to come about, is exactly true? Can we trust that just because he was truthful in I will die and rise again is also true in that he'll pay for your sins? Well, it doesn't seem necessarily to follow completely. In the ever expanding universe where even the universe itself can come from nothing, even a person could just be really, really lucky in saying that I will die and rise again, and it just so happens he does. We just haven't figured out the natural course of events that made that possible. But people win the lottery all the time. And so here's just a big lottery. All right. So our second. And
by the way, let me just say this with regard to the first approach here. This is why the classical, as we saw when we examined classical apologetics, that they spend a lot of time defending a particular Christian worldview and attacking a non-Christian worldview, right? Because they want to make sure that once we get this worldview perspective, then we can, interpret the various facts that we find.
Right.